Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good morning. Welcome back to this Hall of Knights for the last day of this 55th COSAC meeting. A very special and also especially a very warm welcome for those participants who have defied the Dutch weather this morning and still took part in the morning run. I give you a hand of applause, a round of applause. This final day of the COSAC conference consists of two substantive sessions and of the adoption of the contributions. The first session focuses on the exchange of best practices on dossiers related to the European Court of Auditors and is moderated by Mr. Bakker, member of the Senate. Joining us to tell us about the European Court of Auditors are Mr. Alex Brenningmeijer and Mr. File Itela, members of the European Court of Auditors. Mr. Bakker, may I invite you to give us a short introduction on the session.
Good morning. This is Tuesday, 14th of June. Just to remember after a hard day and a hard night after the hard day work of yesterday. We are very proud to receive you again here in the Hall of Knights. And I'm also very impressed by your commitment and diligence to be here at 9 o'clock again and prepared to discuss the issues of today. The drill, if you want to participate later on in the debate, you have to push only once. And if necessary, we have to repeat that, but I think you will know by now. I have a very short introduction because we have two distinguished guests, and I think it's preferable that they take the floor as quickly as possible. But you may ask why did we believe that the Court of Auditors was an issue that we should debate today? For some people it's boring, it's mostly is it an issue for the budget committees, the finance committees, but in fact it's regarding all of us, all the other committees as well. And that's one of the reasons we discussed and decided to put it on the agenda. And we are convinced also, talking about influence of national parliaments, that this is typically an issue where we can have influence on the national governments and at the European level. There is the annual report. You may be familiar with the annual report issued by the Court of Auditors. That is at European level. There are also special reports, and I can really recommend you to take a look at that. There is one on the VAT fraud, there's one on the excessive deficit procedure, and it's really interesting reading. And it's like when we've spent an evening like yesterday, the next morning you ask yourself, on what did I exactly spend my money? And that's why I think we have to look back also on what did we spend in Europe the money, and did we do that in compliance with the rules and with the purposes? And that's, I think, it's a good wake-up call each time that the Court of Auditors issues a report. Now, without much further ado, I'd like to invite the first of the two distinguished guests, Mr. Brenningmeijer, to make a presentation, and afterwards we will have questions with Mr. Itela also on the rostrum. The floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's for me an honor and pleasure presenting the European Court of Auditors here. My colleague File Itela will join in with the discussion. He's the member in charge of the institutional relationships of the Court of Auditors. I myself are for 22.5 years a member of the European Court of Auditors, and it's really an exciting job. The Court of Auditors, working at the Court of Auditors is exciting because we are working on extremely important issues, and I hope to convince you during my introduction of the importance of our work. The Court of Auditors is vested in Luxembourg, and the Court of Auditors is the financial watchdog. Accountability is an extremely issue in our work, and learning government. And I think that's a quintessential issue in the sense that if we want to improve government in Europe and on the national level, it's important that there is an input for learning, and the Court of Auditors is always eager to provide lessons to be learned from past performance. During the last 10 years, the financial government of Europe has increased considerably, and also the performance of European programs has improved. As in the introduction was said, the Court of Auditors produces on an annual basis an annual report. For this annual report, I am reporting member on the 5th chapter on growth and competition for jobs, and I'm specialized in the field of research and innovation. Besides the annual report, we present special reports, and important examples of these special reports are the one on the excessive deficit procedure, European financial governance, and also, for instance, on the control on the credit rating agencies. And you have seen that those credit rating agencies play an important role in financial crisis. Within a couple of months, I will present a report on public procurement by the EU institutions themselves. To continue my presentation, the relationship between COSAC and the European Court of Auditors, and the role of the national parliaments in relation with reports of the national parliaments. An important moment was the introduction of the Lisbon Treaty and the stronger role of national parliaments in European policy making and controlling European policies. In order to provide the national parliaments information, the reports of the European Court of Auditors might be very helpful. And that's not only in relation with, for instance, the subsidiarity principle and the yellow card procedure, but for national parliaments it's very important that up to 80% of the European budget is spent in the member state under management of the member states themselves. So the Court of Auditors is also controlling financial management on the national level, and we inform in our our annual report and in our special reports on the well-functioning of this system. In reporting to European Parliament and to national parliaments, we can give input for instance, parliamentary questions, motions, debates with government, and in saying this, we can observe that the European Court of Auditors and the national parliaments and the European Parliament have a common goal, and that is controlling the government machinery in Europe. The next step is, as the Court of Auditors, and this is a picture of our courtroom, the courtroom of the Court of Auditors, with 28 members around the table. what we as 28 members of the Court of Auditors can do in contact with national parliaments is, for instance, sending a special report on the performance of European policies to the national parliament with a cover letter, and in doing so alerting the national parliaments for certain subjects. What we have seen is that also those 22 members have on a personal basis contact with their national parliaments. Many members have political affiliations and they feel free to communicate with their with MPs in their countries. What we also see is that members of the European Court of Auditors are invited in national parliaments, in parliamentary committees, to give an explanation on certain subjects. And what we can see is there is not one size fits all for the interaction between the European Court of Auditors and national parliaments. It should be tailor-made, and I think the good contact between the member in the Court of Auditors and the national parliament is quintessential, but also the context on staff level. Our experience in the Netherlands was that contacting the staff of the parliament, the secretaries of the parliamentary committees, was highly successful in increasing the awareness for the reports of the Court of Auditors. We will start now a video with some interviews of members of parliament in Luxembourg, Finland, Italy and the Netherlands. Please start the video.
My name is Mark Angel. I'm the president in the Luxembourg Parliament of the Foreign and European Affairs Committee, and I'm an active participant also of COSAC. I'm the chair of the Luxembourg delegation in COSAC. The value of the reports of the Court of Auditors it's very useful for parliamentarians, for European parliamentarians of course, but also for the members of the national parliaments, because first of all they're well structured and they give recommendations, and you can also read the reaction of the Commission to these reactions. And I think as national parliaments we have something in common with the European Court of Auditors. We are responsible of the good functioning also of the European Union, together with our colleagues from the European Parliament, our colleagues from the other national parliaments. We are watchdogs for the political affairs in the EU. We vote national budgets in the European Parliament. They vote the European budget, and the European Court of Auditors is the financial watchdog. So it's important that we work together. We have a common aim. It's the good functioning of the European Union, and we have to sell this also to our citizens.
I'm the chairwoman of the Environment Committee of the Finnish Parliament. When it comes to effectiveness, cost effectiveness of the use of money, the Court of Auditors could be very relevant, could produce very relevant information, because, well, the fact is always that there is nowhere near enough money for all the wishes that different sectors have, and therefore it's very important that the money, taxpayer money that's used, is used in a meaningful and efficient way.
I'm a member of Dutch Parliament for the Labour Party, and I'm a member of the Committee of Economic Affairs. We need information to have a political debate with our Secretary of State before he goes to Brussels and speak to his other colleagues in Brussels. So we need more information, and the European Court of Auditors provides us with information we don't get from our Secretary of State himself. And we use the report for motions, for the debate, for sharp questions. So it's very, very useful.
Well, what are the results of the interaction between the European Court of Auditors, members of the European Court of Auditors and national parliaments? Sjoerd Dikkers said we need information besides what we receive from the minister in order to make informed decisions. So it's another angle in which the Court of Auditors is informing national parliaments as well on the functioning of Europe. What we have seen of the results of this interaction is we have had many positive reactions upon letters of members of the Court of Auditors to national parliaments and to parliamentary committees. The special reports of the Court of Auditors were spread among parliamentary committees, specialized committees. Members were invited to give presentations in relation with the annual report on the whole budget and on special reports. And what we have seen is that the national governments are influenced on their role in the Council in Brussels, because that's another route which is extremely important, that the national parliament, that the national governments are influenced by the input on the effectiveness of the European actions. I have one case I will present very shortly, and that's the case on the VAT fraud. The Court of Auditors has very recently published a report on VAT fraud. I've presented this report to the committee in Dutch Parliament. You can see there again Sjoerd Dikkers, who was in the video. And what we have seen is that in this report, the Court of Auditors collects best practices from other countries. And in the Netherlands, there was a discussion with the Minister of Finance whether we have to improve our action on VAT fraud. And actually today, in the Dutch Parliament, there will be a voting on motions of MPs on the issue of VAT fraud. So you can see that a report of the Court of Auditors trickles down in the operations of the national parliament, and that it is effective in the sense that it makes aware of the necessity to improve policies. Now we go to our second video. The same speakers as before, they tell about their experience with reports of the European Court of Auditors. Start the video.
Next November, when the annual reports come, I will organize a joint committee meeting between our European Affairs Committee meeting and our Budget Control Committee, and I will invite our Luxembourgish member to come to us and present it and have a dialogue with him. I think this would be very useful. I think in COSAC we can discuss on lessons learned. Maybe other parliaments have already very well organized their contacts with the ECA, and we could learn from that, and I think that's something we debate in COSAC, and I'm very happy that our Dutch colleagues put this on the agenda of COSAC, because the ECA is, as I said, a full-fledged EU institution, and it's part of European affairs, and COSAC is dealing with European affairs, so this is very positive.
For us, it's very important to get the reports from the European Court of Auditors, because for us it's necessary to see how policy works out in the field, and we can't have that overview here in the Netherlands. So it's essential to do for us to do our work well and to have a good debate with our Secretary of State, to have those reports present. It's very useful. Use them. What really helped me was the fact that the European Court of Auditors came to our national parliament to explain what the report was about, to give us in detail just give us a bit more background of the report and show the report in the history of the other reports that really helped us understand the report and make better use of it. Our Fishery Partnerships Agreement well managed by the Commission. That was the title of the report of the European Court of Auditors. And they looked into the management side of the fishery agreements at EU level. And for us that's very helpful because we have to deal with the information the Ministry of Agriculture tells us with us. In the Netherlands it's the Ministry of Economic Affairs. We have to deal with the information he gives us, he provides us with. And the European Court of Auditors just gave us a little bit more to work with, and it was very useful to do our task. So for us it's very good to press our government to make real changes for the coming years. As we see over the last years, a period of 15 years, not much has changed. And change is very much needed, as we can read in the report.
The topic, Baltic Sea, that's very important for Finnish people, and well, unfortunately, most people and politicians think about Baltic Sea only in summertime, or mainly in summertime. But political decisions made any time of the year have an impact to the ecological status of the Baltic Sea. And we know that it's one of the most polluted sea areas. And from EU perspective, it's also very, very relevant because one country alone cannot save the sea. It must be a joint EU effort. And so I think that presenting this report on Baltic Sea to the Environment Committee, that is a very good idea. I have not before thought about the possibility of the European Court of Auditors producing these kind of reports analyzing the effectiveness of the use of money. And now that I and our committee have become aware of this possibility, I think that we might discuss the topic and maybe come back with some ideas.
I think COSAC can play an important role on better coordinating what the European Court of Auditors is doing and what national parliaments are concerned, and also with the European Parliament, that first of all, we have good discussions in The Hague during the Dutch presidency, and that we continue this during the Slovak presidency. I think that's very important, that we exchange best practices. As I said, some parliaments maybe have already a very good way of dealing with the reports of the European Court of Auditors. Others can learn from that, copy that, and I think that would be important. It would also be important that COSAC, together with IPEX, will try to have also a proper link of the ECA on the IPEX website. That would be very useful too. And for the rest, this should not be a one-shot event in The Hague where we debate collaboration, national parliaments and European Court of Auditors, but there should be a follow-up.
See the beautiful city of Luxembourg. It's really a pleasure living there. What we have seen is that Mr. Angel from Luxembourg, Member of Parliament, observes it should not be a one-shot event contact with the European Court of Auditors. It's important over the month, over the years, building up a cooperation between the two of us, and on basis of our experience with our pilot project on intensifying the contact with national parliaments, we have collected some best practices. One of the best practices is contacts on staff level, really important, exchange the parliamentary agenda with the program of the European Court of Auditors, members sending Special reports, they identify as important for a national parliament with a cover letter with some explanation, presentation of reports and the annual report in parliamentary committees, and at the end of the day also questions in Parliament by MPs and debate based on the input of the European Court of Auditors. You have seen in the meantime VAT fraud, the excessive deficit procedure, the Baltic Sea policies, the fishery treaties in Europe. Many subjects are covered by the work of the Court of Auditors, and we are always eager to inform the public and national parliaments on relevant issues. And the last question, and that's the question for the debate today, what's in it for you? I think the first issue is be familiar with the work of the Court of Auditors. As Mr. Angel suggested, maybe it should be part of IPEX. Make use of reports of the European Court of Auditors and ask for further explanation and use it for the parliamentary process, and improve the connection between European and the national legislative process, because many times the Court of Auditors make suggestions for improvement of legislation and policies. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to have the chance to present this to you. We can now return to the debate, and Mr. Ville Itala, my colleague from Finland, will join us in the debate. Thank you very much for your attention.
Please take a seat. Yes. Thank you very much. It also allowed us to see our good friend Mr. Angel, who told me he had to be back in Luxembourg, but we remember him from the last COSAC, of course. So he's with us today on the video. The floor is open to questions, and I think we have to be a bit efficient. We have half an hour, so I invite you also to be a bit disciplined. So we have as much as possible people that, or visitors and guests that could participate. Can I open the floor with the Baroness Faulkner, please? The floor is yours.
Thank you.
You know the drill?
I'm here.
Yes.
Thank you. My question really is quite straightforward. It appears that a few countries normally do not discharge or do not recommend discharging the EU budget. The United Kingdom is one of them, Sweden is another, and traditionally it's also been Netherlands. This year, despite the error rate actually being quite significantly high, 4.4%, nevertheless, the Netherlands decided that they would just discharge the budget. So I wonder if there's an explanation for that. Was it perhaps it's for the Netherlands representative to give us the answer. And my second point is, why does 10%, which I understand was the figure for the last period, why would 10% of irregularities considered fraudulent? Is it down to the member states, or is it down to the institutions?
Thank you. We'll take 3 questions at a time, like yesterday, and then we'll give the answers together. Second is yes, Miss Nadia Ginetti, and I think she's over there.
Grazie. Thank you, sir. We feel that this type of collaboration between the European Court of Auditors and our parliaments is extremely important. We have good analyses together with the National Court of Auditors, and we've been able to identify weaknesses in our administrative procedures, and this enables us to make sure that we use European resources properly and to fight the very significant phenomenon of fraud in the use of European funds, for example, in agriculture. We feel we should continue to work together This has been said this morning, and we think it's necessary to strengthen coordination with Europol and Olaf, because we don't all have access to the databases today, but we could strengthen cross-checks with a view to using European funds efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is now to Mr. Mulder here on the front bench.
Yeah. Thank you. I have a question about the attitude of the European Court of Auditors. If you see a problem, what is then your reflex to help countries by making more rules from Brussels? Or are you trying to strengthen countries to solve their own problem? I ask you that because we saw the fraud on the VAT, and I was with the presentation, and you said the UK is doing well. So then my opinion would be, let's help other countries to copy what the UK is doing instead of making more rules from Brussels.
Okay, let's have the division of labor between yourselves. That's up to you, and
Okay.
you take the questions.
Well,
Floor is yours.
the first issue is really important. The error rate on an annual basis is 4.7%. And the European Parliament decides from year to give discharge. And there is also an advice of the Council on the discharge. And UK and the Netherlands have always been quite adverse of the discharge, given the fact that the error rate is 4.7. We also must admit that this procedure repeats itself already during 20 years. So the message is, well, losing its importance, and maybe we should look for other ways to influence Europe's finance and to improve it. And the Court of Auditors has taken several initiatives, for instance, with landscape reviews on the risks in Europe, and then that might be a more effective way to influence. A second issue was fraud and agriculture and the cooperation with Europol and Olaf, and maybe my colleague has some observations as well. Access to databases is extremely important. That is a national issue, whether there is access to the databases. If the Court of Auditors identifies fraud, it's not the role of the Court of Auditors to investigate, but if we have the feeling that there is something not right, we always report to Olaf, and we report to the National Audit Institute, the Court of Auditors on the national level, so that they can also take measures. And the last point of Mr. Mulder, no more rules. We fully agree on the fact that it's not always necessary to bring in more rules. In relation with VAT fraud, our special report has shown that other policies are possible instead of drafting new rules. And one of the key issues, and that's important to state it here, is cooperation between member states. Effective cooperation between member states. And you don't need rules to cooperate. Thank you.
Yeah, if shortly going back for error rate, it's really 4 or 5 countries every year which are against to give the discharge for the Commission. And, but it has been quite many years already with the European Parliament, the discussion that
just, can I have the sound? Yeah. Maybe you have to make a very short explanation what the error rate issue is, because I'm not sure everyone is aware. At least I do as if I don't understand it. Could you explain that maybe briefly?
You're absolutely right. We already have this problem. Most of the decision makers don't understand what is the error rate, and that's our main product every year. So the error rate tells you that we look in our annual report, we look how many errors there are, which are always in media they say misuse of money. It's not always misused, but it's against regulations. So, and then we make this error rate, and before we had we used traffic lights. If you have error rate below 2%, it's green light. That's somehow you can accept it. And between 2 and 5, it's orange light saying that now you really have to take care of this issue. And if it's above 5%, it's red light. And now it was 4.7. So it's quite near for red light already. And this tells me more how it's working, because sometimes people ask, it's 4.7, it's nothing. Like Commission is always saying that 96% is used correctly and turn it around, but that's not right decision. 4.7 is quite a much. But then coming back off this error rate, it's even difficult for normal people to understand what it is. But for us, it's, in the parliament, they say that this doesn't help because this has been the same issue for more or less 20 years. Okay, it worries a little bit, but not too much. And then Parliament is asking that we go more for the country-specific information, more exact information. If we just give you the global % of error rate, what will be the improvement? And this is still going on, this discussion, but this could be very good to get feedback from national parliaments too. Can they use this tool, error rate as such, or do we want to have some changes of our strategy?
Okay, we carry on with next questions, and the floor is to Baroness Hilary Armstrong. And now I have to.
Many of our citizens feel that they paid the price of the global crash. And the British Parliament, particularly through the Public Accounts Committee in the House of Commons, but has also been reflected in the House of Lords, have concentrated on the real problems of global corporations not paying their tax in countries where they make money. I wondered what the Court of Auditors had reflected from the Public Accounts Committee and the other debates in Parliament, and how they can help reassure citizens that global corporations act responsibly.
Okay. We'll take 3 questions together. Madame Cruznier.
Merci pour cette présentation.
Yes, thank you for that presentation. Very interesting. We do receive the various reports from the Court of Auditors at the Belgian committee dealing with such matters. And every year we have a debate with the Belgian representative. Now, regarding relations between the Court of Auditors and the national courts of audit and how those relations work, would the European Court of Auditors be able to make reports on very specific issues? There's a couple of topics that I have in mind. One is the Juncker Plan. Are there plans for the European Court of Auditors to do a follow-up on that, or perhaps it could think about it? The other topic is the Turkey agreement. It would be interesting to see whether the Court of Auditors, the European Court of Auditors, would be able to play a role in looking at that. And just one last point. Is it possible for a member state to ask the European Court of Auditors to produce a report on a topic of importance to it? Or does it have to go through some special procedure in order to do that? I really don't know my way around the procedural rules. I'd be very grateful for an answer. Thank you.
And the last question in this round is Mr. Kelvin Hopkins. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I agree very strongly with the question from my colleague, Baroness Hilary Armstrong. But my concern is about the fact that the UK is a substantial contributor to the EU budget, a net contributor, and yet for many years the EU budget accounts have not been approved, not been signed off by the European Court of Auditors. And this is of concern to parliamentarians in Britain. Can I ask, is the Court of Auditors seriously concerned about this situation? And what are the core problems? Is there a fundamental problem?
Okay, the floor is yours.
Take the last one. Yes. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Who is taking the British contribution?
Yeah.
Always controversial.
Thank you very much for the question about the British contribution, but also the question of the Baroness Armstrong on, well, the globalization and the consequences of the globalization. We can see that being fair in tax paying by companies is not an issue you can solve on the national level. So there should be cooperation between countries within Europe and out of Europe. And I think for that reason, European cooperation is extremely important to combat what we have seen by these miserable Panama Papers. And if the European Union is drafting its policies in this way, the Court of Auditors can also monitor whether these policies are effective. Mr. Hopkins, your observation was that UK is a net payer, as the Netherlands is, and well, then you can expect that the European Union is using this money in a correct way. But then we have to be fair. 80% of all European budget is paid on the national level. So if the Court of Auditors is identifying 4.7 errors in the spending, it are violations of the rules on the national level as well. And if your question is what are the main issues, there are two main issues for errors. There are two main reasons for errors. The first one is public procurement, violating the rules for public procurement. And secondly, just violating the rules in the sense that Europe's money is not spent for the purpose it was meant. And for instance, in research programs, an overcharging of personal costs. That's what might happen. The Court of Auditors is very eager in identifying the concrete problems on national level and on European level and giving an input in for improvement on the European level and on the national level. A short remark from our Belgian colleague on the effectiveness of the work of the Court of Auditors in relation with, for instance, the Juncker Plan and the Turkey Agreement. We gave on beforehand an advice on the Juncker Plan, on the effectiveness of the financial instruments, but we have in our program, in our work program, already an audit on the functioning of the Juncker Plan as well. The Turkey Agreement will indeed also be part of our work program. It's inevitable that we will look at the effectiveness of this initiative. Your last question on this issue was if from the national parliament we have suggestions for subjects. The first way, but maybe you will also add something to it, but I can imagine contact your countryman. So in your case, Mr. Pinkston, contact him because he can influence the agenda for the Court of Auditors. But I leave now the floor to my colleague.
Yeah, continuing with this, it's very important that we get this feedback. What is, in your opinion, very relevant issues to make special reports? That's what we are now discussing with the European Parliament more and more. We are an independent body and we decide ourselves what we can do and what are relevant and what are our resources. But the cooperation is very important. We need to have a feeling that what is relevant, important issues, and then we decide what we do. But I think if you look our program, what we have in pipeline, there are very many relevant issues for even national parliaments. I just look, I can mention some. We will do this wood waste, Ukraine, climate action, refugees, concentrating on hotspots, and for agriculture, greening, how it has been designed and so forth. I think many of these are already important in national level. And that's why we needed this cooperation. And I think this is very important we can be here today, and thank you for that. And the last one about concerning of to give a discharge. We produce our annual report, and we say our opinion about error rate and the financial management every year. And then it's a political issue to decide to give a discharge or not. Some member states, as we talked already, have said that the European Parliament should not give the discharge for the Commission. But we can't say if they should or not, because it's more political, and we are unpolitical body, so that's really political, more political issue. But of course, we had said in our presentation last year, our president said that the error rate is too high. That's our clear opinion. We need better progress on this area, sure.
Well, I would think that's an incentive to all of us, whether it's 3%, 4%, or 5%, an error rate is too high. There is still scope for questions. In view of proportionality, maybe not from the British delegation, but there is still scope for a question. There is one that I want to ask, and maybe not compliant that I do that, but I take the liberty. In following up the national of attack, let's say, scrutinizing the national policies, because 80% is nationally spent. What are your interactions and contacts with the national courts of auditors?
Yeah, it's a very important cooperation, and we have very close cooperation with national sides, and there we can get information, and then they can get information from us. Anyway, they get all the details when we have some reports, and we go to the spot on the member state level. And we are all the time, we have already procedures how we do this cooperation, but we are in progress to have it more and more, and we have planned some cooperation in the working level, so that we can maybe produce common special reports together with the member states level with local size. So it's really important. But it's of course difficult because you have to plan it quite early to do with the local size to put the resources in the right place. But this is our wish, and I think we will have some progress in this sense.
And maybe adding to this, how many member states do issue a national declaration?
There is only a limited number of member states who give a national declaration, in the sense that the Minister of Finance signs for the correct spending of European money. UK did it, the Netherlands did it, and the Nordic countries did it. But it's an issue which is in decline, in the sense that the constitutional structure of many member states is well contrary to the fact that the Minister of Finance will sign for. For instance, in Germany, a federal state, Spain with the important regions, and the spendings are in the regions or in the Länder in Germany, and for that reason it's quite difficult to transform the national declaration as an issue for all member states. But maybe I may add something to this, because that's very important. Your question was also related with the spending on the national level and the control of the spending on the national level, for instance in the social funds. The Court of Auditors is on the one hand very strict in controlling whether the rules are applied in a correct way. But another important issue is maybe there are too many rules. Maybe these rules are not clear enough. And I think this might be an issue for the future. Just pay attention to errors which are find in the field of cohesion or agriculture, which find their real cause in complexity of rules, the change of rules, and the difficulties on the national level to apply the rules in a correct way. And part of it is that member states add their own rules to the European rules. And for that reason, it's important that we have good cooperation with the national audit offices to get a clearer picture on how does it work in the different member states. Thank you.
Okay, we are all on national level lawmakers, so we know how difficult it is to resist adding rules to national legislation, but we try to every time. The floor is now to Mr. Manuel Rodrigues of Portugal. And if there's no other question, he might be the last one.
Many thanks. I would like first to start to congratulate the excellent work the European Court of Auditors has been deploying. I strongly believe national parliaments can benefit a lot from the informed work that the Court of Auditors is developing. For instance, I would like to give one example where there is a lot of discretionarity regarding the analysis, and I'm referring to a special report by the European Court of Auditors, which is calling further improvements on the needed to ensure effective implementation of the excessive deficit procedures. Why am I raising this question? We have some countries, like Portugal, that, in the case of Portugal, is paradigmatic in the sense that it was the country with the highest, with the strongest reduction in the primary structural deficit in the last 4 years. And this country, under an economic crisis, was able to reduce the deficit from 11.2% to 3% in 4 years. And now the European Union is discussing about bringing sanctions into this matter. So it's really needed, which we are against, of course. So it's really needed to shed light and to eliminate this discretionarity on the analysis of such technical and important and relevant matters. And that's why we really believe the work of the European Court of Auditors needs to be reinforced in the articulation with the national parliaments.
Thank you. Could you comment on that?
Yes, thank you for your important observation. And it was indeed the president, the Portuguese president of the Court of Auditors, Mr. Caldeira, and the Spanish member, Tomé Boruza, who went to Portugal to give an explanation on the report on the excessive deficit procedure. And as you know, this is a really important instrument in the financial governance in Europe. You mentioned rightly the sanctions. Up till now, there has been no sanctions from the side of the Council on advice of the Commission in relation with excessive deficits on the national level. If the excessive deficit procedure would have been applied, the sanctions would have counted up till 133 billion euro. So it's a very important issue. In fact, the Court of Auditors is now drafting a follow-up report on the strong arm of the excessive deficit procedure, and we will identify to what extent this procedure was effective and to what extent not, and what should be done in the future. But I think you have identified an extremely important issue. Thank you.
There is scope for one last short question from Finland, Mr. Artur Pitalati. I don't pronounce your name correctly, excuse me for that.
Thank you, Chair. There is one nice point your discussion is that we have too much regulation, and also the national countries add regulation over EU level. This means that we change the other sometimes to give like agriculture money, also the project money. The regulation is too high, that it's more possibility to make more mistakes. And also the IT system is not going on too nice level. And how we can resolve and have a nice, how we can make it easier.
Would you take that question from your...
Yeah, it's quite a huge, important issue, how we can make it easier. Of course, it's many times important that we have not too complex legislation, not too many regulations. Even we are quite often saying that in compliance you have to do it better and so forth, but we understand that sometimes like in public procurement, there's too complex regulation there, and that's why we have to make the regulation more clear and more easy to follow. And if we have in EU level, national level, it's really too complicated for the people and the companies and everyone to follow these orders, and then we find errors. And the error is not the most important. The most important is to achieve the goal we have. Then we have to understand this. We need the goals. Like in agriculture, we have some goals, but if we have too many regulations the farmers can't follow, then we can't achieve what is our goal in politics. So this is important to find the balance with the regulation. And of course, we need a regulation that there's accountability among the people how the EU money is used.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is also a call to ourselves to watch and monitor better regulation. It's not only a task for the Commission, it's also on national level, better regulation that can be implemented with less errors. We're coming to a close of this session. Well, you have noticed the members of the Court of Auditors are real people, they are accessible, you can establish contacts. They have been presenting that they are ready to meet. They are ready to meet and make at administrative level and at political level. There's no limitation in doing that. You see, they are highly competent, and I think we all benefit from getting away from fact-free politics. So this can add having the facts right and take it from there. And I think it. As I think the Italian interviewee said, it's an underestimated value and an underestimated tool to help ourselves to improve our work. And I would like to thank you for coming and wish you all the best and wish you a lot of contacts and cooperations in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye. Chair, the floor is yours again.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the panelists, Mr. Itala, Mr. Brenningmeijer. Thank you, Mr. Bakker, for this very interesting discussion. Our final session today of this COSAC conference is about migration. Obviously, following recent developments, the occurrence of migration streams into the European Union has become very salient, both within our countries and abroad. To explore this topic to a greater extent, we are very pleased to have with us Mr. Gerald Knaus, Chairman of the European Stability Initiative, to reflect on the EU-Turkey agreement. After his introduction, a panel discussion will take place to reflect on different dimensions of this broad topic. We have invited Mr. Elmar Brok, Chairman of the Committee on Foreign Affairs of the European Parliament, Ms. Marina Bellingieri, Member of the Chamber of Deputies of Italy, and Mr. Václav Hampel, Chairman of the Committee on EU Affairs of the Senate of the Czech Republic. Mr. Kamran Ula will be moderating this session. He will now be moderating this session on migration and guide us through the discussion. Please, Mr. Ula, may I ask you to take the floor?
Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be your moderator for the next, let's say, 90 minutes or so. On this migration issue, a topic so much in the news for the last months, and you all worked on it for the last few months or a year. So the next 90 minutes we'll have a discussion here on the, let's say, on the state of play of the implementation of this EU-Turkey agreement with the panelists, the incredible panel already announced. But before we'll go to the panel, it's an honor to introduce to you the man who is considered by many as one of the architects of this EU-Turkey agreement, the chairman of the European Stability Initiative. The floor is to Mr. Gerald Knaus.
Oops. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, first of all, to the organizers. It's a great pleasure to be here, and it's a great honor to present some ideas on the issue of the EU-Turkey agreement. Let me go straight into the subject by reminding us of the core principles that were guiding those, particularly here in this town, the Dutch government, but also elsewhere in Germany and in other European capitals and in the European Commission, to develop this agreement. The idea was to move from a disorderly movement that had coincided with a loss of control of the EU's external border to an orderly transfer of refugees. To restore control by working with the EU's neighbors and not try in vain to work against them. To combine control and compassion, which means to respond to the public's expectation that the EU can control who enters without building a fortress Europe. And above all, to preserve the principle of non-refoulement, not to send people back who escape from danger into such danger. Now, is it possible to do that? The idea that you see here was the idea behind the EU-Turkey agreement, a triangle where Greece will send back those who reach the islands who are safe in Turkey. Turkey commits to take all those back that Greece will send. In return, Turkey will receive visa liberalization and support for the largest refugee population in the world, which is in Turkey. And a coalition of willing states will voluntarily take contingents of refugees from Turkey. That was the basic idea. How is it working? Well, 2 slides on what is working and then a few on what is not. What is working, you see here. While in January this year, we saw the deadliest month in terms of people drowning in the Aegean, 272 people according to IOM. May this year was the first month in a very long time where nobody drowned. Now in January, those who drowned, the 272 people, half of them, the UN says, were children. And secondly, in terms of crossings, if we look at the number of people crossing, what you see here is that, in fact, until the 20th of March, every day, more than 1,100 people crossed to Greece, to the islands, every day. Actually, on the 18th of March, 1,400 people crossed to the islands. That's the day the agreement was signed. In May, in the whole month, 1,400 people crossed. So this has been a dramatic reduction in just a few weeks. Are people going elsewhere? Are people not drowning in the Aegean because they drown in the central Mediterranean? Well, if this would happen, the agreement would obviously not have worked. But there is no evidence at all. If you look at the number and nationalities of those who in this year, in the last 6 months, crossed to Greece or Turkey, you see that there is no overlap. The people who have crossed to Turkey have been Syrians, Afghans and Iraqis. The people who have crossed to Italy in the first 5 months or 6 months of this year have all been from Africa. So what is not working? Well, here's the problem. A lot of things are not working with the agreement. Let me begin with the islands. I just returned from Lesbos 10 days ago. There are 8,500 people there now who arrived after the 20th of March. There are very slow, very few asylum decisions taken, which means that thousands of people are left in limbo. They don't know what will happen to them. And one reason so few decisions are taken is because there are very few asylum caseworkers. In the end, it is the Greek caseworkers who have to take the final decision. And on 5 islands, well, I give you the numbers from 10 days ago, no Greek caseworker on the island of Leros, no Greek caseworker on the island of of Kos, 1 person in Samos for 1,000 applicants, 2 people in Chios for 2,500 applicants, and 13 on Lesbos. The number of decisions was still less every day than people arriving. So this leaves thousands of people trapped. They are very unhappy. There's a lot of riots. There's growing violence. There are suicide attempts. This is a shame for Europe. We should have done this faster. Second, the number of people readmitted to Turkey as a result has been so far less than 500. The number of people resettled from Turkey has been 506. Now, the core principle of the agreement was there would be an orderly path for refugees. The discussions were about 100,000, 150,000, 200,000 people a year taken in an orderly way once the border is controlled. So far, the EU has taken 500 in 2 months. Now, everybody in Ankara thinks this is not serious. And of course, in more and more meetings, people are asking, will the EU keep its word? The EU asks, is Turkey safe? This is a good question. Because what the Turks have done with the 460 people returned so far has not been as it should be. Some people were detained unnecessarily. There is no transparency. The EU should insist that there is full transparency for every single person who's returned to Turkey. Ideally, appoint somebody highly respected, a former human rights commissioner, who gets full access and can reassure us that Turkey is safe for everyone returned. This is doable. It is not impossible, but it hasn't been done yet. So what is needed? Let me sum it up here. If the EU would send a credible pilot European asylum support mission to the Greek islands at the invitation of the Greek Prime Minister, 300 caseworkers who do 1 case a day and work 20 days a month, they could do 6,000 interviews in 1 month. It just has to be organized. And all the people on the islands would have a decision within the next 2 months. This would be fair, it would be in line with EU law, it would end the uncertainty, and it would help Greece. At the same time, we should insist that Turkey ensures full transparency for what happens for everyone returned, and we should show the Turks that we are serious about resettling Syrian refugees from the country with most refugees in the world today, which is Turkey. Now, if we do these things, which are all doable and build on the success of the agreement in the last 2 months, we not only assure that the crisis in the Aegean and the deaths by drowning and the loss of control at the border will not return in this year. We also create a foundation for future EU asylum policy, because the principles of the agreement remain valid for the EU as a whole. Let me discuss concretely what this means. If the EU is able, and if the Dutch presidency crowns its success with an agreement with Greece on an EU asylum support mission that actually is well organized and works, such a mission could be offered to every frontline state that has a large number of arrivals that test and overwhelm its asylum service. Last year, if Greece would have had such a service that would have been able, or Italy would have such a service where the EU sends the people, pays the people to have serious, lawful, fast and fair asylum procedures at the border. If this would actually happen, it would make a major contribution. Now compare this to the current proposal that the Commission has made for future asylum policy, the proposal with quotas. And ask yourself, if the proposal, you know it, the Commission proposes every member state has a quota. In the case of Greece, it would be 1.9% of all applications in a year. And once the quota of applications is more than 150%, everybody else gets relocated. Last year, this would not have worked at all. Imagine 870,000 people came to Greece. The Greek quota would be 22,000 of the EU applications in general. So the Greeks would have had to keep 36,000 in the country, and 840,000 would have to be relocated. Wait, 840,000, we managed to relocate 1,000 people from Greece since last June. So this proposal currently on the table with quotas in an emergency wouldn't work. But imagine if there are EU asylum support missions in Greece and Italy that make quick decisions, that have deals with the neighbors, where a neighbor is safe or can be made safe, like Turkey, people can be returned. Where people can be returned to their country of origin, this happens fast. This reduces incentives to put your life and the life of your family at risk. And at the same time, we have resettlement. This would be an EU policy that combines control and compassion. Now this matters because the Aegean matters. We see the dramatic images in the central Mediterranean. Italians have warned for a long time about what is going on, and they are right. And yet, last year's crisis was essentially an Aegean crisis. If you look at the numbers, 85% of entries last year came in the Aegean. And even this year so far, because of January and February, 2 times more people came into the Aegean than came so far to Italy. So solving the Aegean crisis, making the EU-Turkey agreement work, is central for the future of the EU and its asylum and border policy. And here is the real threat, and we hear it everywhere. The real threat is that the only alternative our leaders and our publics come up with is, well, if we can't stop people, if we can't work with Turkey, if it doesn't work, let's just trap everyone in Greece. Let's turn Greece into the Nauru of Europe, the Australian island where everybody is just stuck. Well, this would be very difficult to combine with EU law, a breach of EU solidarity, a betrayal of EU principles. I think that as a plan B, this is totally unacceptable, extremely dangerous, and also wouldn't work. So let's make the agreement work, let's build on it, and if you want to know more, here are all our reports and numbers and data and sources, and I look forward to the debate. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. And may I invite you to join the panel, and may I invite also our 3 panelists to come forward. Mr. Elmar Brok, Chairman of the Committee on Foreign Affairs of the European Parliament. From Italy, the member of the Chamber of Deputies, Ms. Marina Berlinghieri. And from the Czech Republic, the Chairman of the Committee on EU Affairs of the Senate, Mr. Václav Hampel.
Hello.
And, yeah, sure. And just to make sure how we will do this discussion is we'll first of all start with our 3 panelists. They will all get 4 minutes each to react on what they've heard from Mr. Kraus or to give their introductory speeches. Then after those 4 minutes each, I will ask a few questions. We'll focus on the main issues for the next hour. And of course, it's up to you to ask all your questions, and you know how it works. So make sure if you want to join the discussion, you have a question, or you just want to mention something, press on the button, and then I will come to you. But first of all, let's start with our panelists. Mr. Brok, can I give the floor to you for 4 minutes to give your introductory speech?
Thank you very much. I am very thankful for the figures and interpretations Mr. Knaus has given. We are since last summer in such a situation because the European Union and the member states did not keep their responsibilities. Turkey had 2.5 and 3 million refugees since 3-4 years. We break down when 1 million come to us. And we didn't help them. No, indeed, for 2015, the member states of the European Union decreased the amount of money for the food programs of the United Nations, for the camps in such countries, by 40%, in average, my own country by 51%. And then Erdogan let it open, did not stop them anymore, and the people had to run because it was 800 calories per day. And what we do now, the EU-Turkey deal, to come back to that situation before, in order to have responsibilities towards the refugees. The European Union gives 6 billion euros in favor of refugees, not for the Turkish budget, for schooling, medical services, and all that. That what is done, this deal, is helping the refugees. Secondly, is fighting the smugglers, destroy the business model. This business model can you only destroy at the border on the other side. You cannot do it in your own borders, because then it's too late. When the people on the sea, you have to save them. There's no other choice. So I have to do it there. On Libya, we have to discuss it even more strongly, because it's much more difficult there. And then is this question of taking back, taking over. It's very difficult for the European Union because we have not settled our relocation question. That makes it possible that we keep our promises. That, I think, is an important point. We have a problem, what was said, with these figures of corporations to work there, to look after the refugees. The member states have made promises to send administrators there. They have not fulfilled these promises until yet, by far not yet, to help the Greeks. And therefore I must say the Turkish part keeps more its responsibility than we do until now, including the question of visa liberalization. That is the real situation. If we fail with that, we come back to the old numbers. In October it was per day sometimes 10,000. Then we have to work with the fences, which will never work. It did not even work 1,700 years ago when the Germans went to Rome, because of climate change. They had nothing to eat in the north of this continent, and they find different ways. And it means, in all radical terms, with the fences around our countries, and the fence in Macedonia and the Brenner, that we give up Greece and Italy in order to protect ourselves. This is my idea of Europe, to protect and cooperate with such countries like Greece and Italy, not acceptable. And here we have to show the solidarity for the refugees in cooperation with Turkey and for our own member countries. And therefore I like what you have written in your decisions yesterday. And we need long-term priorities by reinforcing the focus on the external dimension of migration in a spirit of partnership with countries of origin and transit. The deal with Turkey is part of this sentence you have rightly decided yesterday.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brok. And thank you also by sharing your views and saying, you know, we have to take our responsibility, and maybe the Turkish are doing it better than the European Union. So that can be a starting point for discussion in a while. But first of all, now let's go to Ms. Bolinghieri from Italy.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great honor for me to speak as rapporteur in today's session on a matter which is extremely important in public debate in our countries and within the European institutions. We cannot deny that management of migratory flows is a real test of the European Union's capacity to update its tools and policies in order to come to grips with international situations which are constantly changing. We need to be realistic. Euroscepticism is not only the result of irresponsible campaigns by populist forces. It is also the consequence of the fact that the EU has not been able to find adequate answers to new problems that arise. The European Union is in a difficult position because it is affected by the consequences of dynamics which arise elsewhere. These do have effects, nonetheless, on our own lands. The EU must equip itself to play a more active role on the international scene. We must overcome the tend to do too little, too late. This is what we saw as well in trying to manage the financial crisis, we were blocked by fears and resistance of individual member states who still have the illusion that they will be able somehow to benefit or minimize damage by returning to an anachronistic type of independence. Now, we know that distances are becoming shorter because of the internet, and in figurative sense because transport and communication is accelerating. For this reason, the European Commission has said that migratory flows are the new normal and no longer a transitional emergency. This statement is progress because they have realized that we are facing a phenomenon which may well be structural and will not stop. I'm not going to look at this issue from the standpoint of solidarity, although this cannot be neglected. Solidarity with the victims of the many tragedies in the Mediterranean. We've seen these pictures and they remain with us. They recall, or they remind us that we must not escape our respect for the fundamental principles we have learned from European integration, namely that protection of people and solidarity come first and foremost. However, I think it is more useful to address this issue not emotionally but rationally. The starting point is that apart from opinions, the absorption capacity of our countries of these migratory flows is clearly not unlimited. All the more so because we know that on our continent, the economy and the societies are still quite in a precarious position. Europe overall has not yet been able to overcome the longest and most difficult economic crisis we've seen since the Second World War. Clearly, the European economy overall will not grow enough, and that means that it'll be difficult to absorb the migratory flows and provide adequate reception for those who wish to come to Europe. Reception is not only first aid or the initial responders. It implies a series of direct measures to foster integration of migrants in our countries. It's only if the migrants are integrated that they will be able usefully to contribute to our countries, and that's the only way to escape seeing them as an unbearable burden or a risk, especially amongst those who are threatened with losing their own jobs because they fear competition from non-EU citizens who work in the black at very low pay. We must avoid a situation where our willingness to welcome immigrants ends up supporting criminal economies who are exploiting human beings and through illegal activities. The initial intelligent and rational response is the initiative adopted by the European Commission called the Agenda for Migration. This is a set of coordinated, consistent measures to manage increasing migratory flows on the basis of the criteria enshrined in the treaty, that is, solidarity amongst member states. Here, we have the relocation and resettlement programs. They have only been implemented partially so far. This means resettlement mainly of Syrian citizens, and there the plan of action between the EU and Turkey comes into play. We've seen a number of different reactions to this. This action plan provides concrete measures and resources so that the EU and member states can build a structured and binding partnership in order to manage these flows, given the high number of immigrants who are escaping civil war in Syria. And this, of course, means that the European Union must liberalize its visa policy and relaunch the accession of Turkey. Now, the implementation of this plan depends on the will to collaborate by Turkey as well, which cannot escape its responsibilities, and Turkey must fulfill its commitments as well. Here I would refer to the updating of the Dublin regulation and a fully integrated policy on asylum to correct the current absurd situation we've seen, where countries which are most geographically close to the points of arrival must on their own try to identify and assess asylum seekers to see whether they are refugees or immigrants. Clearly, a more balanced criteria for distribution of this burden and responsibility must be developed. Now, I believe that we have seen some progress when the European Commission presented a communication announcing a series of direct measures to stop the boats from landing and stop people from coming into the European Union. This is through an ambitious plan which is based on the prospects for development and stabilization in the countries of origin. This would be accomplished through new investments, as Vice President Timmermans has said. The European Commission has worked on the basis of the Italian government's proposal, known as the Migration Compact. This was quite opportune. We've seen the decision to focus measures on African countries in particular, identifying some countries which would, on a priority basis, receive resources to activate economic growth and discourage people from trying to come to Europe. The second condition is to activate efficient partnerships with the relevant countries to avoid scattering of resources, especially to avoid financing criminal activities or corrupt regimes which exploit the migratory flows. In the light of these considerations, and by way of conclusion, I would like to thank all colleagues for the reference in the concluding report on migration. We know that we are in this together, and Europe must move forward together in order to manage the phenomenon of migration. Thank you.
A bit longer than 4 minutes, but I saw your speech, so I thought let's go to the end. And you focus not only on the agreement now, but also on the future and how we can work also within the different member states. Not only how we can work together, but especially focus on each single member state. So that's also a starting point later on in the discussion. I think you can probably react on what she said. But let's go to the third introduction part of this discussion. Mr. Hampel.
Thank you. I was asked to prepare a brief reflection on the question whether the EU-Turkey agreement works and whether it should be or could be used as sort of an example for other similar agreements. Being a former scientist, I looked at this question in sort of a skeptic way. Skepsis means a method to try to solve questions. And I would say that something definitely does work on the Western Balkan route. We have seen the numbers, they are very impressive, the sharp, rapid decline in the number of people going through agency. I would say what we don't know for sure is what is the mixture of factors that are behind these declines, because three things I think happened at about the same time on the Western Balkan route. The first one, if I look at them chronologically, the first one was the not very nice, a little bit dirty action, but the sort of domino effect of closure of member states' borders on the Western Balkan route. That was, let's say, February this year. Then was the EU-Turkey agreement signed on March 18. The implementation started on April the 1st. And then, probably closely related to that, is a sharp increase in the number and especially the effectiveness of the hotspots in Greece. I would say that probably Greece needed the agreement with Turkey in order to be able to fully implement or fully. We have heard that the throughput of this institution is not optimal yet, but at least we are on to a very good start, I think. It is clear that Greece needs help with this, both in terms of money, equipment, and people. That there are offers for this help. There also needs to be broad acceptance of this help. As for the EU-Turkey agreement, I think, again, it's not the actual effect of of the relocations or returns according to the agreement, it's just several hundreds of people going back to Turkey, several hundreds of people going in the opposite direction according to the... What does, I think, primarily work is the deterring effect. That it doesn't make much sense to go through this route if there is a good chance of being returned. That's, by the way, something that, for example, our parliament has been saying for a long time, that such an effect has to be put in place, and so we are very grateful for this, and we believe this should be done for other regions of Europe as well. And by the way, it also corresponds to a very dramatic experience of Spain some 10 years ago, roughly, with massive migration to Canary Islands, where, again, the strict return policy was able to cut down on the number of deaths that happened on this dangerous crossing. What doesn't work very well, and we have had that, is the relocations. The numbers are tiny. We are at something like 2, maybe 3% of what should be relocated by September 2017, so it goes very slowly. Big part of that, and that's experience of my country, that these people who come across the agency, they have decided to do a very dangerous thing, and once they are in Europe, they want to continue to a place where they know somebody, where they have some relatives, friends, and so on, and they are not very much interested in countries which cannot provide such a social background. So quite a few of these asylum seekers disappear from the system, don't accept the offers for relocation. To briefly sum up, I have few more points, but my time is up. I think the EU-Turkey agreement does work, maybe not at its full optimum effect, but we are quite grateful that it works. We will have to wait what the sustainability of it will be, because, for example, the visa issue, I think, is a very difficult part of this agreement, and in principle, maybe not under the same conditions, but in principle, this is, I think, a good example to follow for other regions of Europe.
Thank you. Thank you all for your introductory speeches. And you mentioned already one of the main questions you were asked beforehand, does the agreement work? And I hope really that we can focus on a few main questions also on your responses, because I can see already the request list is long. So I really hope that you can focus on this question, but also on the questions, do the European Union and the member states fulfill their commitments? And is collaboration or our partnerships the way to work with so-called third countries, so the non-EU countries? Are those the best solutions for migration management? So I think those will be like the issues to discuss on. Mr. Kraus, can I first get a short reaction of what Mr. Brok said, that if we look at the figures, but if you also look how it works right now, maybe the Turkish are doing it better than the European Union. Do you agree?
Well, what is very surprising when you look at, I mean, I agree, but what is very surprising when you look at it from Ankara is, you know, the European Union said a few months ago, I mean, President Tusk, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, this is an existential crisis for Europe. I mean, Europe is shaking to the foundation. I think Donald Tusk said it feels like Europe before 1914. So this is what Turkey heard. Then an agreement was made. Remember Prime Minister Davutoglu offering it to Chancellor Merkel and Prime Minister Rutte in Brussels. The EU says, okay, we will now implement it. And then for the next 2 months, Turkey said, okay, we take people back, and nobody is sent. Hardly anybody is sent back. And at the same time, when it comes to resettlement, the numbers have fallen, and I know from Turkish negotiators, they say, so, when will we say that the one-on-one phase is over, because the numbers have fallen, point 4 of the agreement, And when will the serious resettlement in contingents, the voluntary, start? And in this framework then, the EU says, and by the way, visa is off for the very long term. I mean, seen from Ankara, the question I know many are asking is, what is the EU serious? Does the EU now think that we don't need the Turkey agreement because perhaps we can keep everyone in Greece if it fails? I mean, this is a serious question, and I think the EU needs to make absolutely sure to show that it is serious.
Mr. Brock?
No, I could not agree more. I think it's our interest that this agreement works. And even more, we have to do it with the countries in Northern Africa. That's in the interest of refugees, that they have a better living there with our support and less people dying in the sea. So that all works, and we do not take, not all the member states. The Commission makes a lot of proposals on that, but member states take not over partly the responsibility by giving money, by sending personnel, or taking refugees in a relocation program. And this, I think, is the weak point in that. Not the European Union, member states is the weak point in this whole exercise, what we have to see. And we have to see also that this debate about it, that Turkey is not a country under the rule of law. That's true. And Turkey is far away from EU membership than ever because of their internal development. But there are two questions. Turkey has looked after 3 million refugees since 3-4 years. Only 10% of them are in camps. Most of them live in cities. You have southern Turkish cities where 20-30% of the inhabitants are Syrian refugees. Could you imagine what the political situation would be in our member states if we would face such a situation? We have to understand that blame now Turkey is in this question the totally wrong approach. It's false.
For example, what can we do more? Because you said it works, but we can do more. What do you think that we can do more?
I think it is clear that the relocation part doesn't work very well. So we need to do something on this front. And also we need to solve the problem with the visa. I agree that for Turkey this is an important point, but it is a similar important point for the citizens in Europe.
It's something, so we actually don't know what to do. It's that's the question right now. We want to do something, but we don't know how to do it.
Right. Can I make one or two concrete proposals? I mean, the first one on visa. I fully understand the EU's worries about human rights in Turkey because things have really gotten a lot worse than they were 2 or 3 years ago. But what we are currently doing is symbolic politics. A Turkish change of the definition of terror in its terror law will not end political justice in Turkey because this is embedded in lots of laws, including in the constitution. If you read the constitution, it says lots of activities deserve no protection. And we have seen courts in Turkey do political justice for 30 years. What we really need Turkey to do, which is vital in our interest and crucial for human rights, is treat refugees, those that are there and those that are sent back, as well as possible. Okay. Now, this should be the number one condition for visa liberalization. Okay. And I agree with Mr. Brock that it's hard for us to criticize the Turks when the situations are like they are in the camps in Moria, on Lesbos. I mean, this is the EU, and it actually looks worse than it looks in the camps in Turkey.
Clear proposal. We're talking so much about Greece and about Turkey. Let's go to the Greeks, to the Greek delegation. Mr. Kourakis, can you react on what you've heard? I think it's somewhere there. Yeah, sure.
I would like to congratulate the organizers of this meeting for these very useful and fruitful discussions. It would be very useful, and I think we can adopt such a practice to adopt the opinions of Mr. Mouzalas, Greek Minister for Migration, who could shed light on the practical aspects of this agreement for Greece. the containment of migration flows is a necessary condition, and the agreement, EU-Turkey agreement, has had results for us, which gave Greece a breathing space for dealing with migration flows, which have been high since last year. And although migration flows have been reduced, they have not disappeared. There are still refugees arriving on Aegean islands, and this creates problems both on the islands and on the centers on these islands, and particularly in the examination of asylum requests. There is massive recourse to these procedures by people who cross to the islands, whereas in the past none of the refugees or migrants bothered to submit asylum requests. We need not to waste time in dealing with these migration flows, and the EU-Turkey agreement was not perhaps very sober, and some conditions were not evaluated properly. And this irregular situation was a rational outcome of this. And the countries that were burdened by this outcome were those that shoulder the most burden out of this situation. Turkey, there are still major questions and problems which have to be solved so that the agreement can be implemented in its entirety. However, we must say that Europe did not stick to its commitments in terms of resettlement, and apart from dealing with and managing the current crisis, the European Union should try to move towards ceasing wars which create migration flows through a Marshall-type plan, and the countries that migrants come from, so that there is economic growth, and that would be a solution of the migration problem, having as chief priority adherence to human rights and human dignity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I will ask for reaction, let's go to the Turkish delegation on the other side of the room. Mr. Kavakshi Khan?
Mrs.
Oh, Mrs. I'm so sorry.
No problem. I've been listening to the discussions. Of course, I will not respond to the state of nature, the rule of law, all those different criticisms about Turkey. But there's a root problem. There's a cause for the problem, and it was easy to solve. If we had said stop to Assad, who was killing innocent people, innocent women, men, and children in his country, we wouldn't have an issue about migration, and we wouldn't have an issue about increasing terrorism in the area. Turkey was one of the first nations to raise its voice, yet the world, the rest of us, just stopped and watched. Now, as a country that hosts, as it was mentioned, 2.7 million refugees, and we don't call them refugees, we consider them as guests, we have done more than our share on burden sharing. We have most of the burden, and I guess everybody agrees on that. Now we expect Europe to keep up to its promise on taking the refugees back, on resettlement, and we also are concerned about the news we read about refugees who are sent to different European countries, and all their jewelry and their money, whatever they have, is confiscated. So this is a humanitarian crisis. We as the world nations, as the international community, we need to find a solution. We were late, but there's still hope. If we can find a solution to the root cause, which is the current situation in Syria, then hopefully we can solve this problem and there will be a solution. The second issue is the visa liberalization issue. There were 72 items on the list of EU that Turkey needs to pass through its parliament, and we have worked on that, all of us. We're 3 members of parliament here. We worked on these, passing the necessary laws till early hours in the morning. We have done our job, and it's not 65, but 67 has passed out of the 72, and they're working on it as we speak in the Turkish Grand National Assembly. Now, is EU going to keep up to its promise as to the issue of terrorism, definition of terrorism? What is the definition of terrorism for the European Union? Is there a standard definition of terrorism? We all know that, as a political scientist, I know that there's no standard definition of terrorism, but we are doing our best as Turkey to make sure we host the Syrian refugees and other refugees that are in our country, and we are expecting EU to keep up to its promise, his promise, and is Pacta Sunt Servanda still a European value? So we're hoping that we will get the visa liberalization through, and we hope that we will not have to face the issue of refugee crisis anymore. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. A reaction from here. I think it's a clear message from the Turkish delegation. Do you want to react?
Sì, grazie. Thank you, yes. I would like to reply. In reality, we don't have any responses here at this panel. We can express hopes and wishes. I would like to pick up on the last point made by our colleague from Turkey. If there are European values on which Europe is based, now is the time for these values to be realized. I too believe that the problem is not so much decisions being taken at European level. European level decisions are taken. As was said earlier by Mr. Brok, the problem is how to implement them in the individual member states. I believe that we've listed the various proposals. I mentioned the work on the migration compact by the Italian government, working with the European Commission. So we do have concrete proposals, but we have to work on them. The question is, as I said, who are we? Who do we want to be? This is not just an emergency, as I said earlier. This is a very fundamental structural aspect of our modern world. And this is a test, and Europe will be measured against this test. Now, we are called upon to manage this phenomenon, and each of us must do our part. We must govern it, we must interpret it, we must each do our work. And if we do, Europe will emerge from this stronger on the international scene. If we continue to engage in navel gazing, we'll still be facing many, many problems.
Wait, if I may say one more word on visa, because I think this is really crucial. I mean, we've seen the European Parliament and some governments take a very strong position, basically to say the roadmap, the 72 conditions are non-negotiable. They are like the acquis as if you join. But I remind you that in 2013, Commissioner Malmström wrote a letter to Turkish then Mr. Davutoglu, who was then the Turkish Prime Minister, saying, listen, this is our roadmap. We want you to fulfill all the conditions, but it's our roadmap. Let's not discuss it more, because we wanted Turkey to sign the readmission agreement and to ratify it. Now, I think we now face the question, how do we have more influence on human rights in Turkey? If the impression is created in Turkey that Moldova, Albania, Bosnia, Serbia, these citizens can all travel visa-free, Turkey is helping the EU in a strategic very costly manner, because it's hosting 2.7 million refugees. And the EU is now trying to walk away from something that was very specific, very concrete, on an issue where right now, I mean, there is, if you watch Turkish television, I mean, it's not a good situation. There are serious human rights violations, but there is also constant terror attacks. If we are seen not to be honest, we are not going to have more influence on human rights in Turkey. And at the same time, we are risking the success of this agreement. Now, in addition, notice that if visa liberalization is given, then the EU has real leverage, because it can also be taken away. But if it's not given, then we don't look as if we are living up to our side of the bargain. In addition, of course, 2.2 million Turks have green passports already, which means everybody who works for the state, police, judges, prosecutors, of course politicians, civil servants, travel visa-free today, they and their families. So it's the ordinary Turkish citizens, those who actually live in the towns where we have the refugees, that we are telling, no, we don't want you to apply for visa, we don't want you to have visa-free travel, but at the same time we want you to host the refugees. This is not very good for Europe.
It's two-sided, it's a game of give and take. Yeah, Mr. Brock.
I think, first of all, the role of this criteria is that it's safe for our citizens in our countries. It's controllable. That's the main purpose in order to give visa liberalization. And I must say, if we have a readmission agreement, if we have biometric passports, there are a lot of reasons that the future with such visa liberalization means more protection of our countries than the present situation. This has to take into account. For sure, we have to see this 72 criteria seriously, especially on the anti-terror law. But we have to see it also under the condition what I have described before, not for the overall situation in Turkey. And here's one point. If the people who probably as judges have the right to use anti-terror laws in the wrong direction can travel, but the victim of it, the normal citizen, is not, it becomes ridiculous. And I believe also that if a country is not a full democracy with the rule of law, let people travel, let them come to us, let young people travel. It's always better than they come back to work for more democracy and the rule of law. I am in favor of so many open borders to such countries if the protection question is solved. That's the condition.
Okay. Clear condition. Let's take some others from you guys, because the speaking list is huge. Let's go to Mr. Simon Sutour, and all of you have 90 seconds, 1.5 minutes to respond, and let's have some reactions. You don't have to press. I think it's done. So.
Now, the refugee crisis firstly has a human dimension. Don't let's just forget that. We're talking about thousands of tragic deaths in the Mediterranean. This is an appalling toll, and it calls upon us all to take action. I would remind you, first of all, that Italy and Greece are the most exposed and have been left alone. And I pay tribute to what they have done. I would now like to say that I'm very sorry to move away from the official line that we've heard from the podium today. I would say that hearing what I'm hearing, there is a gulf opening up between the general public and Brussels. The agreement with Turkey was probably necessary and would seem to be beginning to bear fruit. But we can't accept the European Union being brought under pressure by a country which is trying to abuse the situation. Currently, the European money is going directly to human rights organizations in Turkey, but how can we be happy when we know how Turkey treats human rights? All the criteria must be met before visa-free travel can be granted. And we know that the President of Turkey has already moved away from his undertakings regarding the anti-terrorism law in Turkey. The situation of journalists in Turkey is also extremely alarming, and the liberty of the press seems to have been trampled. And that's quite apart from the fact of threats to the independence of members of parliament. We do not wish to sacrifice these principles in the interest of the agreement on migrations. We must insist on this. I'll just finish. Well, Turkey is, let's bear in mind, an accession candidate for the EU and therefore must live up to EU standards on democracy and human rights.
To the other, and we have, I think, more than 20 requests now, so let's try to be brief and take the minute to make your point. Let's go to Sir William Cash.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd just like to say, first of all, that this question of the status of the refugees as compared to being economic migrants is essential. We really have to redefine who are economic migrants, who are refugees. Secondly, this is a legal question, and that's one of the reasons why you've got such a slow way in which the asylum system is functioning. There needs to be a support system, but it's still going to be subject to the law, and it's going to take an enormous amount of time. And apart from that, I just wanted to say that I really don't think that it was very clever to have torn up the Dublin Agreement and to have created the situation in the first place. And I don't really understand the basis on which Germany and Turkey could arrive at this understanding over the Turkish arrangements in the manner in which it was arrived at.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick Azopardi from Malta, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will continue my intervention in Maltese.
Malta welcomes positively the developments and implementation of the agreement between the EU and Turkey. This important initiative is of great help to decrease pressures created because of the situation in the immigration sphere in the Balkans and the Mediterranean. Malta always showed solidarity with EU member states that experience pressure. Disproportionate pressure brought about by these immigration influxes. Malta is giving its help in the implementation of the agreement in logistic ways by giving officials that's visited Greece and helped in the delicate operations on how we welcome immigrants in a dignified way. And we are also helping in the processing of applications. Malta is also giving its contribution in relocation. And it is important that each and every member state shoulders its responsibility and works in order that the burdens are shared. It is important that the European Union keeps up with the pace in order that the immigration is treated holistically.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we have a lot of people waiting for a while, so I want to thank you. It's very clear that Malta is doing its best and asking the others also to join them by fulfilling the commitments from the agreement. Let's go to two more, and then I will come back to you at the panel. Estonia, Mr. Jaak Madison. Mr. Jaak Madison.
Thank you. I will continue in Estonian. Aitäh.
Thank you very much. I would come back to the Turkey agreement. It's based on visa liberalization with Turkey, but granting visa liberalization means also speeding up the decision-making process. But we are looking past Georgia and Ukraine, who have already fulfilled their conditions, and we don't grant visa liberalization to them, but we give it to Turkey. And then we say that we rely on solidarity, democracy, and etc. We are ignoring situation in Turkey, ignoring human rights violations there, and it doesn't seem right. And as for the relocation process, with changing the Dublin regulation, we cannot force member states to agree to quotas or a permanent system of quotas. We see what's happening in the UK at the moment and a possible Brexit. It's no wonder if there will be more countries who are dissatisfied with such a process and would also decide to put on a referendum the issue of staying a member of the EU. If the process continues like that, it will become only worse. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more from Portugal, Mr. Duarte Marques.
Muito obrigado. Sobre esta questão dos refugiados e do
On the question of refugees and migration in Europe, it's important to draw attention to a point that's often overlooked. We keep talking about how Europe is responsible for everything that's happening, but we never ask the member states to shoulder responsibility. I would like to call attention to that fact, which that appeal has been made today. We do talk about the lives that are lost, but we never talk about the refugees who are saved by the armed forces of the European countries and the thousands of lives that are saved because of the policies of the European Union. I think we should draw attention to that here because people tend to forget it. Frequently, we contribute to the Eurosceptic debate because they are against the European Union. Yesterday, we heard Mr. Farage say once again that Brexit was necessary to avoid chaos such as in Orlando. This is a shameful thing for Farage to say. So it's very important today for us to focus on problems, but at the same time, we must also not cede to, we shouldn't cede to blackmail. We need to make sure that we continue combating the origin of the migratory flows and pay more attention to what is happening in the countries of origin.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think the point Mr. Marquez mentioned was also raised in the speech of Mr. Knaus when we focus on the figures. But let's also go to some of the points who were more criticizing. Also, how can we be focus on solidarity and close our eyes for what's happening in Turkey, the human rights violations? So it was mentioned by two of the speakers. What would you say on that?
I just wanted to add one point related to this, and it was mentioned by Mr. Suter from Malta at the beginning. I think we should remember that the visa liberalization with Turkey is very important. We need to move on this front so that this agreement will work and will prevail. But at the same time, we need to remember that what was agreed, what was, let's say, promised to Turkey wasn't visa liberalization period. It was visa liberalization if our conditions are met. And I think there is nothing unjust, nothing unfair to simply not do visa liberalization if the conditions are not met. You know, it's not breaking the agreement. But I agree that we need to do, as much as we can to walk forward towards Turkey and find solution together. And I also deeply agree with the argument. I don't remember. I think Mr. Madison from Estonia said it about some sense of fairness. Turkey, Georgia fulfilling the requirements for visa liberation completely for quite a long time, still nothing, and Turkey fast track. Of course, Turkey is currently at a strategic position, so the situation is slightly or quite different, but still some kind of fairness would be important here.
Mr. Brok, another point made was that we cannot deny the gap between the general public within the European Union and Brussels.
Also not between national governments and the public. Do not blame all Europe for that.
Okay.
The Ukrainian referendum in this country was a no to the Dutch government, not to the European Union. And therefore it's not blame everything Europe for.
But it makes it harder for national governments to deal with this agreement because the general public
because they have to
thinks
explain
different.
it. They have to explain the general public. I wonder, here to do for some parts, that people who do not want to have migrants are against the agreement with Turkey. Intellectually, I cannot combine these 2 points. If Bill Cash says here, I am attacking the agreement with Turkey because that means less migration, at the same time makes a Brexit campaign that Europe creates migration for Britain, then it's a bloody lie. Let's say it that way. It's a bloody lie. Because this is the other way, it's the right point. Using migration for that things. Britain has border controls and can use it. And all the rights also for free movement of labor within the European Union, which is in the agreement. But then telling the migration brings disorder to the United Kingdom is a way of nationalistic politics. It's a lie. It's not the truth what really is going on. We will manage it together with the North African country, with Turkey, or we will lose. We will finish together the war in Syria and Iraq, which is the root cause for 12 million refugees in that part of the world. We have together an Africa policy which will overcome the developing gaps we have, why people run away, their climate change, or we will lose. No nation country can do that alone. We have to do it together in order to come to a conclusion on these root causes. And to neglect that, I think it's a road approach. And the situation in Turkey, yes, I said it clearly, and I attack it, I do it publicly, that Turkey is going at the moment in the internal policy a way which is not acceptable. But it is not a question that we talk not about migration. If you could not talk to other countries, as you have rightly decided yesterday, it's all the countries in that part of the world in Africa about migration who have not the standards of human rights as the European Union, then we can talk to nobody. Then we can talk to nobody. I think this is a moral point of view which is not acceptable for the refugees to help refugees in such countries who look more after the refugees as we do. In Lebanon at the moment, on 4 million people, on 4 million inhabitants, 1.5 million refugees. In Jordan and all that. And I think please do that. Talk about the root causes, help the refugees where they are, otherwise they will come to us. That's the real point. That is the realistic approach, and I think do it proper way. That does not mean to give up our fight for human rights, no, the opposite.
Okay, so explain it also to your citizens, because you live in a democracy. Okay.
Well, it's very important to remember that Turks had visa-free travel to Germany or France or the Netherlands until the military coup in 1980, and the visa requirement was introduced to stop people applying for asylum. So how are we saying that we help human rights in Turkey if we keep the students, the business people, the journalists who might want to come to Europe and who can't because it's difficult getting a visa, by keeping them in Turkey? How is this good for human rights in Turkey? I think we have an accession process where we can be much stricter in the progress reports every year, define extremely clearly where Turkey is moving backwards on freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, terror law, etc. Let's be very specific, but if you go to last year's report, the anti-terror law is just one of many, many issues. Let's highlight it if this is such a big concern. I agree. But to basically prevent ordinary Turks from travel and risk something that is vital for the European Union, because it looks symbolically like the right thing, but isn't really thought through, doesn't make much sense. I agree on Ukraine and Georgia also. I think it's crucial for Europe. And then we have leverage because we can always withdraw it. We can always withdraw it. And as for Turkey, the view from Turkey is that they concluded an association agreement in 1963. There was then an idea of full freedom of movement, which never was realized for many reasons. Then in 1980, the visas were reintroduced. Then all the countries in Eastern Europe and Central Europe first got visa-free travel, Bulgaria and Romania in 2001, then they joined the EU, and the Turks still couldn't travel from Turkey. It's not the sense that, they have been fast-tracked.
One sentence to add?
I have to make one remark. We will have now in the European Union, we'll decide in July in our committee, in the Labour Committee, a safeguard and an emergency break if visa liberalization does not work in a proper way to cut it to a country. And then we will have in September the vote about Georgia and Ukraine, which was asked for. In the same procedure, we have Turkey with this emergency break. And because the negotiation will probably go on until October, Ukraine and Georgia might be before Turkey. Okay. And please do not wait, because that one has it not, we have to stop the others. That has nobody helped. And the last sentence, please talk about solidarity if you take people yourself in your country, and not blame the others who have a problem because they have taken millions.
Okay. Another direction. Let's go to Daniela Auroi. Madame Auroi. Yes, sure. It's not working? try to say something? No, it's not working. They are working on it. Let's give it another try.
No, it works.
Oh, we can't hear you. We'll come to you with a handheld.
Take another seat.
We'll come to you with a handheld. There she is already. So you have 10 seconds left.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. Let's go.
Alors, je vais être...
Yes, I'll be brief. First question that wasn't really raised. Is this agreement legally certain? When you listen to the NGOs, the Greek Asylum Service, the European Office on Asylum, they all tell us that Turkey is not a safe third country. So can you give us a different answer? And if not, then we have to ask ourselves about this. Second point, we just heard the Turkish representative explain that they do not recognize our definition of terrorism. That is the European definition of terrorism. Now, that raises a basic question as well. I'm not going to come back to what my colleague Sutur or our Portuguese colleague were saying either. And I would like to say, what controls do we have on the financing that's being proposed in exchange for liberalization of visas? My third point now. What about traffickers? We're told that the Balkan routes is more or less closed. That's good for the Greeks, but what about Malta, Cyprus, or Libya? Haven't the traffickers just changed routes? That isn't a real answer, or the solidarity that we should all exercise vis-à-vis the refugees. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take these points directly, and then we'll go to the next person. I think these questions,
yes,
you can answer the best.
Well, if you look at the question of safety, I mean, there have been some very important changes in Turkey on the refugee and asylum issue in the recent years. 2013, in the middle of being the country with most refugees in the world, Turkey passed the new asylum and foreigners law. This law was praised by the European Union, it was praised by UNHCR, and it meant that Turkey now has the possibility for Syrians and non-Syrians to get protection in Turkey. Last year, 64,000 people, non-Syrians, non-Europeans, applied for protection in Turkey. And the numbers are all in the Commission report on visa liberalization, in detail. Of those 64,000 people who applied for protection in Turkey, and here's the problem, 3,400 people got protection and 700 did not, and tens of thousands had no response. So what we need to make sure, and this is why I made this proposal, we need to make sure that the law, which is fine and which is there, and I talked to Mr. Grandi from UNHCR recently, who says the same. The law is fine, but it needs to be implemented. Now, the question is, will it be implemented? Well, that we cannot take on trust. We need to monitor. This is why I think the EU should put together a small, credible, independent monitoring group. The Turks should have to accept this group to monitor what happens to every single person, and we have the list of names, that is being sent back and will be sent back under this agreement. I think this is something Human Rights Watch, Amnesty and the European Commission could agree on, because it improves the situation for concrete individuals. So it's not based on trust, it's not based just on the law, we need to see how it is being implemented. But to say that Turkey cannot be safe for any refugee, when very soon we will be begging Turkey to open its border again for those people fleeing Aleppo, and then we say, please open your border because you need to take more people because they will be massacred. I think we need to help Turkey become as good a place for refugees as possible. It's in the interest of almost 3 million refugees already there. And to just say, well, we don't deal with you, we don't give you the money, we don't make deals with you, is not in our interest, but it's not in the interest of the refugees.
Thank you. Within 2 weeks, the EU presidency will be handed to Slovakia. So let's go to Slovakia. Blaha? Mr. Blaha? Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, from the first moment, the Central European countries, including Slovakia, wanted to stop the unregulated migration. That's why I support Mr. Colleague from Czech Republic. And so we hope that the EU-Turkey deal will work. We support this deal, and we really accept that we need to make some compromises because we need this deal existentially. And that's why I think that especially we need to fight smugglers and demotivate poor people to travel and die in the sea, to travel from the camps in Turkey to go to European Union. Well, we were labeled like unwelcoming before because of this position. Now I am very happy that this position is the European position, and I really believe that this will be for future, and the EU-Turkey deal will be some prospect for solving the solution and seeking the solution, and not the social engineering like the redistribution of the people like they are the bags of potatoes. I think this is the solution, protection of borders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go to Estonia, Mr. Kalle Palling.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of remarks. I totally agree with my Greek colleague who mentioned that we need a new Marshall Plan for Europe to help the region which is suffering the most because of the war. And if after the World War II, Marshall Plan managed to invest more than $130 billion to build European Union up, we should have the same opportunities to do it today. But as currently we seem to have one plan, and we are after the voluntary relocation, of course, and this is the deal with Turkey. I would like to ask from our Turkish colleague who's here currently and spoke before, that what will happen if Turkey won't get the visa liberalization? Because if there is a situation where Georgia and Ukraine doesn't get the visa liberalization, I think that Turkey cannot get either. And what happens then with the deal as such and keeping migrants there?
Okay. Thank you.
Send them to Estonia.
Sorry? What did you say?
I think we should send then more refugees to Estonia if we do not get the deal with Turkey. That might be a solution.
But they don't want to go there.
Well, that's a bit cynical.
And then, for sure, it's sarcastic, cynical. What
it is, yeah, sure.
But also his argumentation was sarcastical and cynical in that way. Ukraine, Georgia, and Turkey have nothing to do with each other, and they will be granted visa liberalization at that moment if they fulfill the condition. It looks at the moment so that they fulfill the conditions. Therefore, will this in September or October the final decision about Ukraine and Georgia in a positive sense.
But it's a signal to the other countries. That's what he said. It's a signal when we talk about the visa liberalization with Turkey.
Look, we have visa liberalization with Colombia, with the Arab Emirates, and all these countries. And I would like to have a visa liberalization with Georgia, as we had already with Moldova, and with Ukraine. I would like to have it. Okay. And with Turkey, which is a candidate country, despite all the internal problems we have discussed several times, if there is, in that way, Mr. Knosik explained it, a visa liberalization, I do not see where the major problem is when the security measures are fulfilled. Okay. And combined with a readmission agreement and combined with an agreement which says it's this emergency break that any time when Turkey or Georgia misuses the visa liberalization can be finished.
It's time for a Marshall Plan for the region that suffered the most. Would you agree on it?
Can I make a very, putting it in a bigger context, we have at the moment the biggest source of refugees, the biggest humanitarian catastrophe in the world is Syria. We have half the population displaced or outside the country. 5 million, mostly in Lebanon, Jordan and Turkey. And then a small number of them, mainly in Sweden, Germany and Austria. Now, the United States has currently a debate where it is becoming impossible for the Americans to take Syrians. I mean, in the last years, they promised, but a few thousand were taken. So here is our question, from the point of view of European security. If we do not help that the 400,000 young Syrians of school age in Turkey and Syrians in Lebanon and Jordan have education, have a future, if we do not help these countries with serious money, and the 6 billion for Turkey are a step in this direction, with serious money to integrate and offer a future. And if we do not resettle tested, vetted refugee families from places like Turkey, and this is where this deal offers a way in, if we do not do that as Europeans, we will have a huge potential for radicalization, destabilization in, Lebanon, Jordan, all these countries. We will just be watching it, and we will keep talking about root causes when right now we could be doing things today. And the Turkey-EU deal offers us a chance to begin with some of these measures.
Okay, short reaction, then we'll go to the next one.
Yes, very briefly. We need to take this very seriously just because of what was just said by my colleague. We cannot use the pretext that in some countries human rights are not respected to build walls in our countries. We have to think about the future of Syrians and other refugees, but our own future is at stake as well.
Okay. Let's go to the next person, Mr. Hursik, Richard Hursik.
Thank you, the floor, Mr. Chairman. In Hungary, we are convinced that the Migration Action Plan and the EU-Turkey Agreement is a crucial step in tackling the migration crisis. We believe that further initiative and ideas are urgent needed. In order to find a common European solution, my Prime Minister in April presented a very clear action plan which underlines the fundamental importance of protecting the external borders. In our view, it is crucial to preserve the freedom of movement inside the Schengen area. Moreover, agreements on readmission and return should be concluded and enforced with countries of origin and transit. In this regard, I welcome that these aspects are reflected by the new partnership framework on migration recently issued. Thank you.
Let's then go to Switzerland, Mr. Portman.
Yes, dear colleagues, Mr. Chairman, solidarity is not only a case for EU members. In between Europe, Switzerland shows solidarity. We, in September 2015, agreed to take over 40,000 Syrian refugees. My dear colleagues, France, as 10 times bigger than Switzerland, agreed this year for 30,000. In Switzerland, we already took over 12,000 Syrian refugees. So we're not only talking, we are doing something. But please, don't overcome here on debates and don't solve the problem. Italy sends us now every day thousands of refugees to Switzerland without fulfilling Dublin Schengen. We understand this, but we cannot handle this. And let me say something else. If Austria or France once are going to close their borders to Italy, Switzerland would be in a position that we have to close our transit ways from North to Southern Europe. And this would be a collapse for whole Europe. Please, our solution is clear at the end. We need a Frontex where Switzerland will be ready to join and to give assistance to a Frontex, and we need hotspots around Southern Europe, and this will be the beginning of the solution, and then we need military security zones in the Middle Eastern Arab countries and in the North Africa. Let's talk about this than being here so with some arrogant speeches from one country to other countries.
Okay.
This is not, as a non-EU member, this is not what we understand what you should be as a friendship association.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's go to two more from the audience, and then we'll go to the panel. Ms. Marie Granlund from Sweden.
Tack för det. Och jag skulle också...
Thank you. Thank you very much for an interesting debate, and especially for the contributions from Mr. Knaus about how we can improve the asylum system and asylum reception. I will be taking this back with me to Sweden because I thought they were very constructive ideas. I think it is very positive that we have reached an agreement with Turkey. You can find all the problems and difficulties you like in this type of agreement, but somehow we have to solve the problem. These are people fleeing. This is a humanitarian disaster. Something has to be done. And I think it's positive that we have reached agreement. Now we need to move from words to action. It's about relocation, assessing asylum applications, and if we don't do it, we will be judged harshly by future generations. I'm convinced of it.
Thank you. And then let's go to the last one from you guys. Is Ms. Maritmaier from the Netherlands.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the interesting debate and also for the introductions. I must say we talk about the EU-Turkey deal and we talk a lot about Turkey and too little, I think, about the EU. And one of the pictures that you showed, Mr. Knaus, in the beginning is a picture that we, with our European Affairs Committee, saw also in February in Greece, that on the islands we actually see refugee status. Also in the north of Greece we see refugee camps, which we are used to see in African countries, but we have them in the European continent. And I must say that also, 3 months later, the situation has not improved. And I really wonder, when you explain that there's only 15 people that are right now processing the requests of the asylum seekers, and we have promised us, European countries, not the EU, but European member states, to improve the situation, to have an asylum support office that improves the situation there, that assists also this processing and the protection of refugees in Greece. I think we really need to do some extra steps, and I would like to ask you, why do you think this doesn't happen?
Okay, last question. Let's start with it.
Well, this is a very good question, and I'm very happy about this opportunity. I mean, the one thing I would ask all members of all national parliaments, if they can, is to ask their parliaments and to ask also the European institutions why in the regular reports on what happens on the Greek islands that come out of the Commission every month, why you don't find the two key informations. How many Greek caseworkers are on the islands? It's not in there, it's never written. And how many cases they have dealt with? It's not written. So we can't actually assess currently as parliamentarians or as public what is happening. When you go to the islands and you talk to people in the camps, they talk about a deteriorating situation, growing frustration of people who've been kept there for 2 months, and on some islands they don't have anybody they can talk to. Then you ask the question you asked. Why is the European Union, the Greek government, the European institutions, why are we not coming together and say, let's make this a pilot flagship mission to show to the rest of the world how you can do fast asylum procedures while treating refugees well, while having camps that are secure at night, which they are not, and I know it from the people who work there. Now, I don't understand. My hope is still that perhaps the Dutch presidency, in the remaining weeks, can put this on the agenda and say, let's create, not just that we send experts or second officials, let's make this a European mission. Okay. And secondly, I was very happy to hear from Switzerland and Sweden. I mean, it is crazy. Sweden last year received the largest number of refugees in Europe, by far, by capita. And yet, in the last few months, in the last few weeks, Sweden still takes the largest number of people resettled from Turkey. I mean, why aren't other countries doing the same? Okay. Why aren't other countries following Switzerland? Because then the Turks would see that the European Union is serious.
Okay. We're running out of time, so very short reactions from the other panelists.
An attempt to very brief reply to this last question. There is this example of Bulgaria that agreed to take 47 asylum seekers since the Turkish agreement went in effect. And of these 47 people, when they were told where they go to Bulgaria, 36 withdrew the asylum application and 7 others simply disappeared from the system. So at the end, Bulgaria only could take 4. And I think that's what I said at the beginning, big problem of relocations is that people do have their minds. They know where they want to go. And if we send them elsewhere, some of them oblige and some don't.
Okay. Ms. Berlingueri?
Sì, rapidamente.
Quickly. One of the subjects we haven't sufficiently dealt with in our discussion is nonetheless a crucial issue, and that is cooperation with third countries. We all have our problems. We've heard about this today, the problems with visas, the question of hotspots, the question of greater collaboration. But another point that we should work on is this. As our Swiss colleague was saying, we should get down to brass tacks. We must establish serious targeted cooperation, strengthened cooperation with third countries. Let me come back to what Mr. Brok was saying earlier. To cooperate seriously with the countries of origin of migrants, We cannot hide behind the idea that in those countries they may or may not fully respect human rights, because frequently these are countries where they do not respect human rights at all. But that can't be a pretext for us to avoid collaborating with them. We must work with them in order to ensure that people can have a dignified life.
Mr. Brock?
Thank you very much. That has the idea, as the last people spoke, why not set up within COSAC an implementation oversight team? What, in all the decisions in September, member states in the European Union have implemented what they have decided? Because we have an implementation problem, not a decision problem. And secondly, we have to define that the right to come have refugees, war refugees, and asylum seekers at asylum means, and make here the clearer definition, because that will also limit the numbers and give clearer possibilities to deal with that properly. The last point is external borders protection. We have already put in the Constitutional Convention, in November 2001, I made myself that proposal to set up a European border and coast guard. We can double in such circumstances only if we have solidarity with the country who have to deal with that. And therefore we have to do it jointly together. We cannot keep it to Greece, Malta and Italy alone. And here we have to closer cooperation, take common responsibilities and costs of that. I think that is very much important. And that belongs also to the root causes. When we want to fight the smugglers, we have to smuggle them on the other border, on the other coast. Otherwise, it's too late. And what the Swiss delegate here said, that we have to talk about political and military measures in certain parts of Northern Africa, I think is an interesting idea. When I see, for example, that most of the traffickers in Libya are already in the hands of the Islamic State, it becomes also a military threat for us.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think it's very difficult to have one conclusion for this panel, of course, but the main can be that we're all working hard on it, but we still have an implementation problem. And thank you. So first of all, thank you to the panelists, Mr. Hampel, Ms. Bellingheri, Mr. Knaus, of course, and Mr. Brock. Thank you so much. And thank you all for your participation. I know that we have still a lot of people on the speakers list, but unfortunately we are already run out of time, so we have to stop here. I'm so sorry, I have to give it back to the chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ulla. Thank you, panel, for a truly fascinating discussion on such an important issue. Obviously a very topical issue, with quite a long list of speakers still out there, and apologies also from our side that not everyone could take the floor, but obviously it is very topical. The list of speakers was still very long, so perhaps we have to get back to this within the COSAC. It is not off the agenda, of course. I think it's wise after such discussions to have a short break, to have a cup of coffee, and perhaps continue the discussion amongst ourselves in an informal way during the coffee break. But after this short break, I would like to see you all gathered again at noon, 12 o'clock, so that we can move on to adopting our contributions. Thank you. See you at noon.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I know.
All right. Welcome back, colleagues. Once again, apology to those of you who could not take the floor in the migration debate. We would like to give you the opportunity to send us your statement. The email address is shown on the main screen, and we will make sure to distribute your statement to all delegations and publish it also on our website. Now it is time to move to a very important part of this conference. In the past few days, we have worked very hard to come to a collection of contributions. We are happy with the results and look forward to adopting the contributions by consensus after your fruitful discussion yesterday. I assume we can now adopt these contributions by consensus. I see no objections, which means the proposed contributions are adopted. I'm very happy with the results of this conference and congratulate the participants on a job well done. After the adoption of our contributions, it is time for a rather special moment. In the past few months, the Dutch presidency has organized a lot of activities to substantiate and celebrate our presidency of the European Union. To increase the level of interest in the presidency among young academic students, we have organized an essay contest. Students from Dutch universities and universities of applied science could send an essay in which they answer the question what the role of national parliaments in the European Union will be in 25 years from now. We have received several essays, very worthy of winning the title of Best Essay of the Presidency. We were impressed by the quality of these essays. It proves that Europe and its future are very much alive among young students. Students who one day might very well be in our position. One essay stood out among the others. Mr. Andrea Finesso wrote an essay in which he outlines his vision for stronger involvement of national parliaments in EU affairs. He argues for a bicameral European parliamentary system with the European Parliament as the lower chamber and a permanent high chamber consisting of elected deputies from national parliaments. Whatever one may think of such a proposal, we applaud the fact that a new generation gets involved in the debate on parliamentary democracy in Europe. We congratulate Mr. Finesso with winning the contest in such great style. And you have won a trip to Bratislava. We will include you in the Dutch delegation to one of the upcoming interparliamentary conferences of the Slovak presidency. May I invite you to the stage to offer some further comments. Mr. Finesso, please.
Distinguished delegates, it is an honor for me to be here today. And first of all, I would like to thank the Dutch Parliament for organizing this essay competition and invite me to present my ideas. I will not lie, it does feel a bit awkward to talk about parliaments in a room full of parliamentarians. And this is why I think that the best contribution I can give to the conference is to speak as a citizen, as a young citizen who feels a growing distance with institutions. At both European and national level, power is increasingly concentrated within the executive at the expense of parliamentary debate, parliamentary influence. And I ask myself, what is European democracy without its national assemblies? Nothing at all. Therefore, I do believe that a much greater involvement of national parliaments in EU affairs is necessary. However, this should not happen through isolated initiatives or sporadic conferences. I believe that this must occur through intense and systematic cooperation and through the integration of our democratic resources. My idea is that it is time to bring back in the European governance debate the question of a Senate of the European Union, a body gathering members from national parliaments representing the interests and concerns of member states. This body would co-legislate with the already existing European Parliament, becoming the two chambers of a European bicameral system. This, of course, will only be the result of a very complex process, but we must engage in this process, shape this process, in order to achieve a truly democratic and truly legitimate European Union. My call to the national delegations today united is that we have to enrich and strengthen the European political debate if we want to achieve richer and stronger European politics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Finesso, for your speech. And I heard that the Italian delegation, Mr. Romano from the Italian Senate, wants to have the floor. Mr. Romano, may I give you the floor?
Grazie. Thank you, sir. I am particularly pleased to offer a warm salute from the Italian delegation to Andrea Finesso. The young student at Maastricht University is studying European studies. This prize is particularly important, not only because it was given to an Italian, but also because it gives us a tangible proof of what cultural exchange means. It's the meeting of cultures which can provide a future to the European Union. And this is the tangible testimony of how any ideological dogma can be overcome with cultural dialogue and a dialectic which unites us, not only in dialogue, but also helps us to travel this road together. I am particularly pleased as a university professor to find a student who is achieving his potential outside of Italy. This is tangible evidence that the Erasmus project has been able to help us to build a future. I would like to submit the following to this assembly. This is a great initiative. And this initiative, I think, which will also be recognized by the European Committee in the Senate. Senator Ivan Titi will recognize this. And we are going to recognize we're going to create a European prize on the 60th anniversary of the Treaty of Rome. Thank you, and congratulations, Andrea.
Thank you very much, Mr. Romano, for the kind words. And for Mr. Finesso, I hope you have a good time in Bratislava, and please do visit us again. We cannot stress the importance enough of you spending time and effort to be involved with Europe. All right, dear colleagues, our meeting has come to an end. This moment marks the end of our interparliamentary conferences. In a span of 6 months, we have organized 6 conferences in various topics. Now we have the honor to close the last one. And what a conference it was. We have discussed many facets of parliamentary scrutiny within the European Union, spoken about the rule of law, and focused on parliamentary diplomacy. On this day, on our third day, we have discussed the European Court of Auditors and sharpened our ideas about migration and the challenges it poses for the European Union and for us as an EU member state. After all of this, we have adopted some promising contributions, and I look back on a very fruitful conference. On behalf of my colleague, Mr. Elsinga, I would like to thank all the participants of the meeting for their active role in creating a lively debate. This goes for the members of parliament, but of course also for their supporting staff. Aside from these people, I would also like to thank the civil servants who assisted in organizing this event, including all the interpreters. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the parliamentary staff for the substantive preparation of this conference. Thank you. And a special word of thanks goes out to the people who have turned this ancient building, which contains no conference or technical facilities at all, into this beautiful conference location. And many thanks to our technical support team who have made sure that we have been able to achieve our goal of this parliamentary dimension to be more innovative. And also a thank you to the people who have taken care of the inner being by making sure drinks and food were served on time. Maybe I can ask you for giving an applause. But furthermore, you might have noticed a lot of enthusiastic youngsters aiding us in making this plenary COSAC meeting a great success. A special thanks goes out to the students of the Hague University of Applied Science who have volunteered to do this. They truly have been a tremendous help during this conference and all of the conference we have organized. Thank you very much. Before I proceed to close this conference, I would like to give the floor to my colleague from the Parliament of Slovakia to introduce the next meeting of our IPC in Bratislava. Mr. Blaha, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I first of all would love to congratulate the Dutch presidency for fantastic organization and hospitality. It's a big inspiration for us Slovaks, and it will be a big challenge for us to be as good as you, and it's not easier for us. And we will surely follow also your interactive Dutch pattern of this discussion because it was very refreshing and I think it will need to be followed. So first of all, I would love to present Slovakia's presidency in short 3 minutes video if you can put it. Thank you.
For us, this sound holds immense emotional value. This sound symbolizes life, love, and Slovakia. Slovakia has traditionally seen itself as the heart of Europe. For the next 6 months, its pulse will become the pulse of the entire European Union. We have many ideas and even more ambitions. And yet, we're not only concerned with how our presidency will help Slovakia. We're asking, plain and simple, what will our presidency bring to the European Union? This is our answer. We will work hard, systematically and persistently on issues that are important to all EU member states and their citizens. We have a clear plan for tackling priority issues. We are determined to help Europe avoid fragmentation and enhance resilience. We will pay particular attention to making the migration and asylum policies sustainable. We want Europe to be prepared for investments and new jobs. This is why we will focus on creating the right environment that allows European projects to get off the ground. How? By mobilizing investment tools, by deepening the economic and monetary union, by helping small and medium-sized enterprises within the capital markets union, and by strengthening the banking union. Since we understand what Connected Europe means, we will devote our efforts to common European projects, such as the single market, the energy union, and the digital single market. We will therefore focus on challenges that require a common approach and common European solutions. Such challenges include the previously mentioned sustainable migration policy, as well as the European neighbourhood policy and EU enlargement. These are the issues where, acting as an honest broker, we will seek solutions benefiting the entire Union. As presidency, we will be chairing one of the 3 main EU institutions, the Council of the European Union, which represents the EU's 28 member states. The meetings at different levels, from technical to ministerial, will take place in Brussels, Luxembourg, and Bratislava. And in doing so, we will show you Slovakia, her beauties, charms, and secrets. Slovakia, the country holding the presidency of the Council of the European Union from the 1st of July to the 31st of December. Slovakia, recharging Europe.
Thank you very much. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I would love to cordially invite you to Bratislava, to Slovakia. We are the modern, dynamic state with a pro-European government and very beautiful capital, Bratislava, where we can meet first on 10th and 11th July on the chairperson's COSAC, and then in the November of Plenary COSAC. There will be many issues which was raised also today and yesterday, including migration, including TTIP, social union, and the posting of workers directive, even the Britain's referendum and energy union. So I hope that there will be a lot of discussions, and I hope you will enjoy Slovakia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blaha. I wish you all the best with your presidency, and we're looking forward to meet you in Bratislava. Before we invite you all to have the farewell lunch with us, I invite you to sit back again and enjoy a brief visual flashback of our inspiring conference. For now, we would like to invite you to have lunch with us, which is waiting for us in the other room. And I wish you a pleasant remainder of your day and a safe trip home. Thank you very much.